September 12th, 1958, 11:47 p.m. The room was silent. 300 people frozen in place, staring at a moment that would become legend. A man had just tried to assassinate Bumpy Johnson, and Bumpy Johnson had turned that assassination into a lesson. But that night at Lenox Lounge was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. Because while Harlem learned what real power looked like, another war was already unfolding just a few miles away. A dirtier war, a louder war. A war led by a man who believed fear was the only language that mattered. His name was Dutch Schultz. Before Harlem ever whispered the name Bumpy Johnson with respect, New York already trembled when people said Dutch Schultz out loud. Schultz didn't build loyalty, he didn't build community, he built terror. Where Bumpy ruled through patience, Dutch Schultz ruled through brutality. Where others negotiated, Schultz executed. Where men hesitated, Schultz pulled the trigger. And there was only one man in New York who openly refused to fear him. Legs Diamond O'Toole. Legs Diamond wasn't just another gangster, he was chaos in human form. An Irish-born outlaw with a crooked grin, sharp suits, and a reputation for surviving what should have killed him. Gunshots, stabbings, ambushes. He walked away from all of them. Every time someone tried to put him in the ground, Legs Diamond stood back up, smiling wider than before. And every time he did, he made sure Dutch Schultz heard about it. By 1930, New York's underworld was already carved into territories. Italian crews, Jewish syndicates, Irish gangs. And then there was Legs Diamond. He didn't respect borders. He hijacked liquor shipments wherever he found them. He robbed Italian operations one night and Jewish outfits the next. But most of all, he hit Dutch Schultz's alcohol empire. Truckloads vanished, warehouses burned, money disappeared, and every trail led back to the same name. Legs. Worse than the losses was the disrespect. Diamond drank in bars controlled by Schultz. He laughed loudly, bought drinks for strangers, and told anyone listening that Dutch Schultz wasn't half the man people thought he was. That wasn't bravado. That was a death wish. In the spring of 1931, Dutch Schultz called a private meeting. No Italians, no Irish allies, only his most violent men who didn't ask why. Schultz didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "Legs Diamond has to die, not someday, not soon, now." The plan was simple. Follow him, corner him, shoot until there was no doubt. But there was a problem no one in that room wanted to say out loud. Legs Diamond didn't stay dead. The first attempt came at a cheap hotel upstate. 2 gunmen entered his room late at night. 5 shots at point-blank range. Lungs, stomach, chest. They left without checking a pulse. By morning, New York woke up to the headline. Legs Diamond was alive, hospitalized, but breathing. When Dutch Schultz heard the news, he didn't explode. He didn't scream. He went quiet. Then he said something that chilled everyone nearby. "Next time, I don't want survivors. Not him. Not anyone." Word spread fast. Lucky Luciano heard about it first, then Meyer Lansky, and eventually Bumpy Johnson. Everyone understood what this meant. When Dutch Schultz turned something personal, it didn't end until entire neighborhoods burned. Luciano knew Schultz was dangerous, too violent, too unstable, too reckless. A public war between Schultz and Diamond would draw police attention, federal attention. But Schultz didn't listen. The second attempt came months later, an ambush outside a restaurant, more gunfire, more blood, and once again, legs. Diamond survived. This time, he left the hospital limping, enraged, and convinced of one thing. Dutch Schultz would never stop hunting him. Instead of disappearing, Diamond did the worst thing possible. He talked, he bragged, he told people that not even Dutch Schultz could kill him. In the underworld, that wasn't confidence. It was a mistake. Meanwhile, Dutch Schultz was unraveling. He saw enemies everywhere. He trusted no one, and his allies began to distance themselves. Lucky Luciano stepped back. Bumpy Johnson watched silently. Everyone knew the truth. A man like Schultz could not be controlled forever. But before anyone could stop him, Dutch Schultz made one final decision. This time there would be no hospital, no witnesses, no legends. And when Schultz's men finally found Legs Diamond on that quiet night, they didn't hesitate. 3 shots, point blank, no miracle this time. Legs Diamond O'Toole died in 1931, and with him died the myth that Dutch Schultz could be challenged without consequence. But that victory came at a cost, because by proving he could kill anyone, Dutch Schultz also proved he was too dangerous to keep alive. Legs Diamond died because he underestimated Dutch Schultz, and Dutch Schultz would die years later because he underestimated men who played a longer game. Men like Lucky Luciano, men like Bumpy Johnson. And that is where the real story continues. The real danger of Dutch Schultz didn't come from his enemies. It came from his allies. By 1933, the underworld of New York was changing. The old way of chaos, impulsive violence, and public bloodshed was becoming bad for business. Too much attention, too many headlines, too many cops. Lucky Luciano understood that before anyone else. Luciano believed in structure, in rules, in quiet power. He wanted an organization that functioned like a corporation, not a street gang. And men like Dutch Schultz didn't fit into that future. Schultz was unpredictable, paranoid, and worse than that, loud. He killed without permission. He threatened judges. He talked openly about assassinating public officials, and every time he did, he brought heat down on everyone connected to him. After the end of Prohibition, Schultz's empire started to crack. Liquor was no longer illegal. Profits shrank. Territory mattered more than ever, and Schultz wanted more. He pushed into Harlem, into the Bronx, into numbers rackets that were already protected. That brought him face to face with Bumpy Johnson. The two men couldn't have been more different. Bumpy listened. Schultz shouted. Bumpy calculated. Schultz reacted. And while Schultz believed intimidation was enough, Bumpy understood something deeper. Power survives only when others allow it to. Schultz didn't ask for permission. He demanded submission. That sealed his fate. In 1935, Dutch Schultz became obsessed with one idea: killing Thomas Dewey. Dewey was the special prosecutor who had been dismantling organized crime piece by piece. Schultz blamed him for everything: the indictments, the pressure, the fear creeping into his own organization. Schultz believed that if Dewey died, the problem died with him. Lucky Luciano disagreed. Killing a prosecutor wasn't business. It was suicide. Luciano called a meeting of the commission, the highest authority in organized crime. The question was simple. What do we do about Dutch Schultz? Schultz didn't wait for permission. He told people openly that Dewey was a dead man. He said it in bars. He said it to associates. He said it to men who immediately reported it back to Luciano. That made the decision inevitable. You don't let a reckless man drag everyone into a war with the government. The commission voted. Dutch Schultz had to die. The irony was brutal. The same man who had hunted Legs Diamond without mercy was now the target. On October 23, 1935, Schultz sat in the Palace Chop House in Newark. He was eating dinner, laughing, relaxed. He never saw them coming. Gunmen entered the room. Shots exploded. Schultz was hit multiple times. He didn't die immediately. He lingered in the hospital, delirious, drifting in and out of consciousness. Dutch Schultz spoke in fragments, rambling sentences, half-formed thoughts, words that made no sense. The police tried to make sense of them. They couldn't. 3 days later, Dutch Schultz was dead. No funeral worthy of his power, no empire left behind. Just silence. And just like that, the most feared man in New York vanished. His territory was divided, his men scattered. His name became a warning. Bumpy Johnson watched it all from Harlem. He understood the lesson perfectly. Violence without control destroys itself. Power without respect invites rebellion. Fear works, but only for a while. Lucky Luciano solidified his system. Rules replaced chaos. The commission ruled quietly from the shadows, and Harlem remained under Bumpy Johnson's influence. The story of Dutch Schultz became legend, but not the kind men wanted to follow. It became a cautionary tale. Legs Diamond had believed survival made him untouchable. It didn't. Dutch Schultz believed fear made him immortal. It didn't. In the end, the men who lasted weren't the loudest. They weren't the most violent. They were the ones who understood timing, patience, and when not to pull the trigger. And that understanding is what separated kings from corpses. When you're ready, say continue, and I'll move deeper into the long-form arc, expanding this into the full 3-hour narrative with deeper dives into Luciano, Bumpy, and the system that replaced chaos forever.